Hey, in this video, I'm going to take you step by step through how you are supposed to do floating shelves between two walls, also known as box shelves. I'm going to take you inside a client's home, show you exactly how I do it on the job site, every step of the way. You will be able to do this yourself by the end of this video. Maybe. Depends how good at woodworking you are. But I think you can, because I'm going to walk you through it really nicely. So, watch the video and please subscribe to my channel. Hey, I'm in a client's home today and we're going to be installing some floating shelves. I'm going to teach you how to do it. First shelves we're going to do are going to be encased in between these two walls in this little nook here. So I'm going to show you how to do all the framing and case in your shelves for that. All right, so the customer's already determined the height that they want the shelves to be. There's going to be two separate shelves, one starting right here at this mark, and then we're going to do another one 18 inches off of that. Now, the shelves are going to be 2 inches thick and 17 inches deep. So the first thing we want to do is build all of our support structure for the floating shelves. So before we do that, we got to figure out where all our studs are and make sure we're going to land on studs and aren't going to need any anchors on these front supports. All right, once we get our studs figured out, level works best, obviously, because you can make sure that your brace is going to be level. So we're going to put it right on that line where we want the top of the shelf to be. We're going to make a little mark, but our shelf is going to be topped with 3/4 inch plywood. So this is going to be the top of the shelf. So our brace actually has to come down 3/4 of an inch below that mark, so that the height of our shelf is correct. We also want to mark where the front of our shelf is going to be at 17 inches, and we're going to face it with 3/4 inch stock. So we want to come back 3/4 of an inch off the front of that as well, so that we can put our face piece on. Now you're just going to continue this around the other two sides of our enclosure, and then we will add our support system. So I like to start with my side pieces first. That way I can get both my side pieces up and then kind of wedge my back brace in between them. It makes it nice and tight. The other thing I like to do is put my brace up there, mark on the brace where my studs are, and then pre-start my screws into the brace piece. That way they're held in place. I can put it up there, screw them in, and I'm not fumbling around trying to hold screws and my impact driver all at the same time. All right, so this is what's called a box shelf because we're gonna box it in. We're gonna put 3/4 inch plywood on the top because that's gonna be the setting surface, so we want that a little sturdier. Then we're gonna put 1/4 inch plywood on the bottom with a face piece to make it look like one solid box. So in order to do this, our plywood on the top, probably fine, it's 3/4, but we don't want that 1/4 inch plywood on the bottom to droop down. So now we're gonna put some brace pieces coming straight off this back piece that we can actually attach that 1/4 inch piece to in the center. This isn't really going to do anything for support, but it is going to give us a nailer strip so we can hook that 1/4 inch piece of plywood on. So we're going to do that right now. All right, now before we cut the plywood to fit, you can't just assume that the wall is going to be square. 99 times out of 100, your wall is not square. So if you cut your plywood perfectly square, it's either gonna be really tight in one point and loose in another point, or it's gonna be tight in the back and have a big gap in the front. It's just not a good way to do it. So what you wanna do is actually scribe the wall onto the shelf and cut perfectly to fit the wall. Now this is hard to do because you can't put the plywood in there in between two walls and do a scribe. So the easiest thing to do is to cut a smaller scrap piece of ply, put it right against both of your walls, make one for each side, scribe that line, cut it, and then use that piece of plywood as a template. Now, fortunately, I was able to get one of Woodpecker's one-time tools. This is their shelf gauge, and it actually is adjustable. It's hard to see, I know, it's kind of a small room, but you can stretch it in between your two walls, adjust the angle perfectly, lock it in place, and then map out your angles directly onto your shelf. If you do shelves like this a lot, if you can find something like this, it's an absolute game changer. It makes it super easy. If you can't, the plywood scribe method will work perfectly fine, but you want to make sure that your pieces are scribed to the wall. Don't just cut them square, or else it's not going to look as good. The other nice thing is because our shelf's only 2 inches thick, it's a pretty safe guess that your top piece is going to be identical to your bottom piece. So go ahead, spend all the time getting your top piece nice and perfect, and then just use your top piece as a template to cut your bottom piece. Should be really close. This is a really good example of exactly why this is so important, because you can see I followed my shelf gauge and I got about, what, 1/2 inch gap up there. But by the time I get to the front of my shelf, it's down to about 1/4. So there's a 1/4 inch movement from the back of the shelf to the front, which is why it's so important to use a gauge and not just cut it square. So here's another helpful little tip when you're installing shelves in tight spaces. When you try and get the shelf in between the two walls, the first point of contact is always going to be this bottom corner. So this is the bottom of the shelf. This is actually the top. If you add a bevel onto that bottom corner, you're going to be able to get the shelf into a much tighter space without dinging up your walls. I just did this really quick on the chop saw because you're not going to see it, so it doesn't matter. But you could also use a router with a little bevel bit. You do it any way you want. You could hit with a block plane. But if you can just remove some of that corner, it's much easier to get the shelf in place. And this is the part of the video where my microphone battery died. Don't worry, you're not going deaf. The sound will come back on in just 1 second. All right, now that we got our top piece and bottom piece in, I like to use staples, not pin nails, on the bottom 1/4 inch piece. Pin nails have a tendency that they can pop through 1/4 inch. Staples aren't gonna do that. It's a little bit bigger hole that you have to fill, but I just feel a little better about it. On the top, I just use 16 inch finish nails. You only need like 4 or 5 of them. It's not gonna go anywhere. Now you can see there's a little bit of flex in this shelf right now, but we're just about to put on our face piece. And it makes it look good, but it also adds a lot of structure to the shelf, so it's going to get rid of any wiggle you might have left in there. Perfect fit. Now for the face frame, I like to step it up to 16 gauge. Just because it holds a little bit better. And you remember, you're going to want to hit all of those braces. Now I actually marked out where the braces are on this top piece already so that I can find them, and then you want to hit those end braces. Don't try and nail into this bottom 1/4 inch piece. You're just going to blow a nail out and have to repair it. So you really just want to go into the braces and the top piece of 3/4 inch ply. All right, and just like that, we got ourselves a nice, really sturdy shelf. It's not going anywhere. Now, if you're using pre-finished plywood or hardwood that's already been finished, at this point you're pretty much done. Just fill your little holes and call it good. If you're gonna paint, at this point you can fill all your nail holes, maybe clean up with a little caulk around your seams, although ours are pretty darn tight, so we're good to go. Sand and paint whatever color you want. I'm actually gonna paint this one, but there's nothing in the world more boring than watching a chubby white guy paint a shelf. So I'll spare you that on the video. Hope this helped. Hey, thanks for watching that video. I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned something. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe down below right there. It would really help me out. And leave a comment. Tell me what you liked, didn't like. It's all good. It's an open forum. I might say something rude back. If you say something rude to me, I kind of like to banter that way. But still, subscribe.